Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky pushes EU leaders to speed up his country's EU membership process as they meet in Kyiv.
Ukraine, Poland and Baltic nations threaten to boycott Paris 2024 if the IOC allows Russian and Belarusian athletes compete in the tournament.
European Union leaders meeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv on Friday for a highly symbolic summit that for the first time happens in a war zone. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Charles Michel travelled to the Ukrainian capital under high security measures. The gathering focused on Ukraine's path to EU membership. Kyiv would like to start negotiations this year, but even if the declaration of intent is there, many EU member states are clearly against fast-tracking the process.
The EU will support you in every way we can for as long as it takes. We are not intimidated and will not be intimidated by the Kremlin, because Ukraine and the EU, we are family.
Kyiv is also pushing for more sanctions against Russia. The European Commission promised to work to have them ready by the first anniversary of the war on February the 24th. But the Ukrainian president regrets that some member states are not always supporting Kyiv.
А що якщо їх дітей візьмуть, посадять в автобус і щоб вони поїхали, силою поїхали на територію Російської Федерації? За таку силову депортацію треба, як мінімум, накладати санкції. Підтримку лідерів Євросоюзу в цьому я почув, ми це бачимо. Але повинна бути підтримка всіх лідерів ЄС.
Ukraine's president, he did mention some rigid timeline and even deadlines, saying this is about delivering weapons to Ukraine, specifically long-range weapons. Now, this is something, he says, that would help Ukraine win, and he said that the European allies and Western allies of Ukraine know exactly what weapons is required to help Ukraine win and to make not just Ukraine, but also Europe safer. Sasha Vakulina, Euronews from Kyiv, Ukraine.
The International Olympic Committee is facing headwinds after Ukraine's Olympic body said it might boycott the Paris 24 Games if Russian and Belarusian athletes are allowed to compete. But Thomas Bach, the president of the international sporting body, announced days ago that these competitors should be allowed to participate on the condition that they are not actively supporting the war and competing under a neutral flag. However, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said the move tells, quote, the whole world that terror is somehow acceptable. After Zelensky threatened to boycott the Games, Poland and the three Baltic nations said a boycott was also a possibility. They have worked closely together on foreign policy since the invasion of Ukraine. Warsaw added that a coalition of up to 40 countries could turn their backs on the competition, making the entire event pointless. But the IOC says boycotting the Games would be a violation of the Olympic movement and the principles it stands for. Meanwhile, the idea of a boycott isn't good news for France, which has been preparing for the Games for many years. The port city of Marseille is also preparing for the arrival of the Olympic flame. It will travel aboard a sailing ship all the way from Greece in spring 2024. The President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, met with Ireland's President, Michael D. Higgins, on Friday in what was the highlight of her second day on the island nation. 50 years after the Republic joined the European Union, Metsola thanked Ireland's residents for welcoming some 70,000 Ukrainian refugees into their homes. The day before, after she received a standing ovation in Dáil Éireann, Ireland's House of Parliament, she said the EU will remain at Ukraine's side for as long as it takes.
For 343 days now, Russia's brutal and illegal invasion of sovereign, independent Ukraine and the bravery of Ukrainian people remind us that progress and justice cannot be taken for granted. Democracy cannot be taken for granted. Europe cannot be taken for granted.